I challenge you to a duel.
Hello and welcome to episode 23 of the Movie Duel podcast. My name is Peter and I am your host. On each episode of the Movie Duel podcast, myself and one of my co-hosts pick a subject that's based around films, and then we each pick a movie that we think best fits that subject. The only rule being that you cannot pick a film that has already been discussed on the podcast. And this time around, I'll be joined by Movie Duellist Tarquin Mandrake, and we will be talking our choices for Best Female Directed Horror. But before we get into that, just a few points of order for this episode. Last time round, on episode 22, Nicole joined me to discuss our choices for Best Comic Book Movie, non-DC or Marvel. In which we discussed Nicole's choice of Akira and mine of Sin City. We put it to the polls. It's led us to a 75% to 25% victory in favour of Sin City, which was my choice. So thank you very much to everybody who agreed with me, and for everybody who voted in the poll. The poll for this episode should be dropping in the next day or so after the episode's dropped. So please head on over to X/Twitter and vote on the poll, and let us know what you thought. And just like to send some thanks to people who retweeted the post for the last episode. So those this time around go to Watch It If You Can podcast, Creative Psychopaths, Jeff Brandon Warner, the Film Shrapnel podcast, Movie Drone podcast, Paul from Filmbusters, Ben from Filmbusters, Jamie Russell, and Bernard and Dean. And a special shout out to Ben from Filmbusters as well, who was very complimentary of Nicole's Japanese pronunciations. She is epically fantastic at nailing those pronunciations, whereas I completely fluff even the most basic of names. So thank you, Ben. And your opinions are not just limited to the polls on Twitter. You can drop comments on the posts on Facebook, on Instagram, on Threads, and let us know what you think of our choices, and they'll be sort of taken into consideration when we tally up the polls. Be great to get a bit more interaction on some of our posts and sort of see what you guys think of our choices. And obviously, if you can throw us a 5-star review and a like and a follow and a subscribe or whatever on it's called on the platform that you listen to us on, it would be most appreciated. And just a quick announcement: we are sort of fast approaching the end of the year, the end of 2023. So from this point on until the new year, we're taking a sort of semi-hiatus to sort of finish off the year. We're not going to be putting out any of the regular dual episodes, just so that we can sort of take a mini break, get Christmas and New Year out of the way, and then start tackling those subjects into the new year. Doesn't mean that you won't be hearing from us. We've got a few special episodes, 2 to 3 maybe quick draw episodes coming up with some fantastic special guests. We've also got the Christmas special, which will be landing fairly soon, and the end of year review, in which Liam will be popping back to cover the latter part of 2023 and discuss what we've seen and what we thought of them. So there's all that sort of stuff to look forward to in the next couple of months, and then some point in January hopefully we'll be back with the regular format, and really, I just want to take this opportunity to thank everybody who supported us through the year and listened and don't be afraid to get in touch with us. It's nice. It'd be nice to hear from more people of what they think of the podcast and what they enjoy and what maybe they don't. You can hit us up on all the regular channels, so Facebook, on Instagram, on Threads, and X, where we are at Movie Duel Pod, and you can also drop us an email at movieduelpodcast@gmail.com. And as always, this episode will feature spoilers for both films that we're discussing, and will feature strong language as well. That being said, I hope you enjoy episode 23 of the Movie Duel podcast.
Finger licking good.
Okay, so welcome to Tarquin. Tarquin, how are you today?
Fantastic, yeah. Bit chilly. London's on the turn.
It certainly is. It's almost as cold as the new Ghostbusters trailer. Have you seen that?
No, I don't watch trailers. I don't want to ruin the film. What am I missing?
Basically, New York being frozen over and some icy sort of ghost ice queen, I suppose, makes an appearance towards the end. Looks quite interesting, to be fair. I enjoyed the Afterlife. I thought it was better than it had any right to be, but I'm looking forward to that. My daughter's looking forward to it as well, so it'll be nice cinema trip for us.
I liked Afterlife as well. It hit all the right beats.
Yeah. But what have you been up to lately? Any good watches? Any recommendations?
Well, exciting news, because it's David Fincher week, basically. I've been following the Blank Check podcast, so I've been watching a lot of David Fincher, and I watched 3 films this week, including the brand new one on Netflix, The Killer.
Any good?
Yeah, very tense.
All right, cool.
Although I did watch Gone Girl, and that was so fantastic that it's kind of blown me away. But it's not quite up to that standard, but it's a good watch.
Yeah, Gone Girl. I think Gone Girl was a bit of a sort of. It was almost a bit of a sleeper, really. It just sort of came out of nowhere, from what I remember, and I didn't hear a lot about it when it came out, but I sort of picked it up when it landed on streaming, and it's just an incredible film.
Yeah, it's good classic storytelling, just like you don't see the twist coming and then bang, Those
Absolutely.
really pick up a buzz.
Absolutely. I've been other than obviously stuff for the podcast. I've been I started The Sopranos on
Hooray.
partially on your recommendation and Jamie's as well. And it's sort of a bit sort of stop-start with it. I've only watched the first 3 episodes because other stuff sort of come up, but I was enjoying it so far, and obviously you guys said that it really picks up as you go along, so I shall
better and better. Yeah.
I shall make sure I persevere with that. But it's the new series of What We Do in the Shadows dropped onto Disney Plus, so I've been binging that a little bit as well. And Lost Soul, which is the story of Richard Stanley's Island of Dr. Moreau, dropped onto Freevee as well. So I just had to watch that again because it's an amazing documentary.
Yeah, it is.
And
good.
just
sad that he kind of derailed himself within a year or so.
Absolutely. But for anybody who's not seen it, it's on Freevee now on Amazon Prime. It's called Lost Soul. Is it the story? I think it's called The Story of Richard Stanley's Island of Dr. Moreau or something like that. But it's a really incredible documentary about his original vision and sort of the trials and tribulations he had in trying to get his version made, which obviously ultimately didn't happen. But I would thoroughly recommend it to anybody who's got an interest in filmmaking and just weird, batshit, crazy stories about Val Kilmer and Marlon Brando. It's really fascinating to listen to.
I feel like he kind of did it to himself. Like, the producers were trying to get him to do fairly basic meetings and things like that, and he just refused to turn up in the big strop. So he was a bit of a prima donna as well.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I want to test to his creative genius.
Well, I must admit, the only other film of his I've seen is it Colour Out of Space, the one he did with Nicolas Cage, and I really enjoyed that. I thought it was good. I've not seen any of his, because I think he only did 2 films before that. Is it Hardware? I think it was his debut. Yeah. And I've not seen that. I don't know if that's any good. Have you seen it?
Maybe like back in the day. Famously nicked off a 2000 AD Future Shock story by Kevin O'Neill.
All right, okay. But enough about what we have been watching and what we've been watching for the podcast. But before we get into that, we should just quickly touch on your last appearance on the podcast, in which we discussed our choices of best workplace comedy, with my choice of Clerks and yours of Car Wash, and it was a 7-0 victory to me on the Twitter polls.
And I did a poll on evolution of horror, and that was also a big win for Clerks as well. What can I say? I mean, far be it from me to advocate for full sterilisation of the mentally incompetent, but these people are dogs, and they should be killed.
Well, but out of that post on the evolution of horror discussion group, you got sort of a head start for this episode, haven't you? Really, you've already got 1 vote for your film. It might have been in the wrong category, but you've already got a vote.
Bless you, bogus magma.
So it fell to me this time around to pick our subject, and for no reason other than I thought it would throw up some really fascinating films. I went for best female directed horror. So first of all, Tarquin, how was this an easy choice for you?
Yeah, pretty much. Shamefully, it's not something I've delved into much. That's fair. I like Jennifer's Body, but the film I chose was Near Dark, which was always a favourite from way back, by Catherine Bigelow.
Separate your head from your shoulders.
Do it fast.
All right.
The time's roll. Woo! No! You might as well just kill me then, too.
Caleb Colton no longer belongs to our world.
We'll give him a week to see if we can call him one of us.
He belongs to hers.
But you have to learn to kill.
He belongs to theirs.
I want to kill.
He makes a kill tonight.
And they all belong to the night.
It's 3 hours short for a bus ticket home. You help me out?
What are you on?
Believe me, I told you.
Just don't think of it as killing.
Evening.
Evening. Don't think at all. It's just something that you do night after night. It's only ever a question of how.
You nervous? I would be too if I were you. Near Dark.
The bigger boys falling in with control. Check out time.
Bought yourself some time, son.
God damn, this is my family. Let him go.
Near Dark. Pray for daylight. The night has its price.
All right, so synopsis. Caleb is a young farmhand living in bumfuck Oklahoma. To be precise, the significantly named town of Fix. His dad's a veterinarian. Caleb has a horse and a truck, but he is bored shitless with his life and his friends. Adventure and romance beckon when he meets May, stratospherically out of his league. A beautiful, doomed Princess Diana look-alike gothic waif. She introduces him to a gang of vampire outlaw desperados and the narcotic ecstatic delights of drinking blood. Will Caleb be able to cut it with the deadly gang of thrill-seeking immortals as they roam the Midwest, leaving a trail of even redder necks? Or, as all available evidence strongly suggests, is Caleb a little wuss vampire that ain't no good for nothing?
Fantastic. So, what's your sort of history with Near Dark? Is it a film that you saw when it first came out, or is it something you picked up later on?
As soon as it came out on video, I think. Same year as The Lost Boys.
Because it was the same year as Lost Boys, wasn't it? Was it?
Yeah, it's like it came out 3 months after and suffered because of it. So they said.
Absolutely, I can see that. I mean, is this Catherine Bigelow's first film?
No, she did one before, or co-directed one, The Loveless, I think 6 years earlier, which was like a biker film with William Dafoe's first film.
Oh, right, okay. Okay.
It's more artistic, and here she started to get into action, which is her forte.
Yeah, definitely. So why did you pick this film?
Well, I know it. Yeah, I know it. I love it. It's always been a favourite.
Okay, fair enough. So what do you think its appeal is? Because it's quite a, I would say that it's a cult film. I definitely hear it sort of mentioned as a bit of a cult classic. So obviously we touched on the fact that it was released 3 months after the Lost Boys. Do you think that's the only reason that it maybe wasn't as successful as at the time?
Well, it came out with like 2 different production companies. One folded just before it was released, and then Dino De Laurentiis' group also went into receivership at the time of its release. So whereas The Lost Boys came out to like 1,400 screens, this only came out to like 200. So I mean, that couldn't have helped.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, much more select base, probably more art house type theatres because it was an independent production.
But I mean, it's certainly. I mean, this is the first time I've seen this film. It's been on my radar for quite a while because I've always sort of heard of it in the horror circles as being a vastly sort of underrated vampire film. And it's sort of got an independent feel to it, but it doesn't look. I don't think it looks like an independent film. It looks quite smart for probably what wasn't a huge budget, and I think.
7 million or something like that.
Yeah, and I mean, at the time, I suppose it's not got, massive star power behind it, I suppose. I mean, Lance Hendrickson, Bill Paxton, Jeanette Goldstein, they were all familiar faces with, in certain circles of cinema goers.
Well, they're all carryovers from Aliens.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
We come to Bigelow's relationship with John Cameron, which I think they were going out like 89, like a couple of years later, but obviously they were pretty tight before. And
Yes.
she's got Adam Greenberg as a cinematographer, so that's where that really distinctive, beautiful black nighttime photography comes from. All the pavements slicked down with water, so you get the neon lights reflecting off them. And he was the guy who did Terminator 1 and 2, and Ghost, and bit of a genius.
Oh, right, okay. Cool. I mean, yeah, it's a really smart looking film. I think it's sort of obviously intentionally scuzzy and sort of bleak in places, but it still looks. It looks like $1 million. I think in a lot of places. I mean, I suppose there's a certain amount of scaling down that, again, probably comes from a smaller budget than some films. But with that, the shots of the desert and the farm and the farmland and everything, it just gives it quite a lot of scope. And then you sort of contrast that with scenes that are just entirely in the back of a camper van or a motel room or whatever. It's there's such a great contrast to the look of this film throughout it.
Yeah, I mean, just I've read the script, and there's more action scenes in there. There's more big confrontations, but obviously they couldn't afford to do all that, so they just pared it down to what they could afford to do and made it look fantastic, you know. And there's really clever ideas, like the thing, I don't think I've seen it before, where the shaft of light becomes deadly, like where they're inside the motel room shooting out with the cops.
Yes.
It's got these like laser lights things shooting the vampires, doing more damage than the actual bullet holes, and you know, just really clever ideas like that.
So let's maybe sort of dive into the casting, because it's not a huge cast really. Let's start with Adrian Pasdar. Now, I mean, my experience of Adrian Pasdar, he's obviously had sort of bit parts in films in the 80s, and then he sort of disappeared and reappeared in something I was quite fond of, which was Heroes, in sort of I think that was 2010, 2011.
Okay, they're kind of lost rip-offs with superheroes.
Well, yeah. But I'd be remiss to say that I'm not entirely sure whether or not Adrian Pasdar is an actual vampire, because he doesn't look to have aged a day since this film. But what did you think of him as our sort of leading man?
Yeah, I mean, really interesting character, Caleb. You know, he's kind of pathetic in a lot of ways. Like, he needs May. You know, he pretends to disapprove of what May is doing, but he needs her, so he's dependent on her. And that's quite rare for a male character. He looks the part. He's great. He's a dumb cowhand who gets into something way over his head and just struggles to survive, I think, which fits.
Yeah, I think for me, he sort of struggles in the early part of the film. I think it's hard to sort of get on board with him. You know, there's this sort of awkward, you know, where he's trying to sort of kiss May and sort of make his move, and she's not sort of having any of it, and it's a little bit sort of.
Yeah, I mean, she's attracted to him, but she's stopping herself from biting him, basically.
Yeah,
there's like 3 times where he tries to kiss her and she just pulls back. And then the things he's saying are so hopelessly mundane in comparison to the world and where she's at, that he just doesn't.
Yeah, it's not going to work on a vampire, no. But yeah, so Jenny Wright, I mean, she's not an actress I'm overly familiar with. But what did you think of her? How do you think she sort of?
Yeah, I mean, it's core of the film for me. Beautiful, enchanting, you know, and you can see the conflict inside her all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose her character, she's quite, you know, her sort of character changes quite a lot throughout the film. You know, she seems very sort of sympathetic in some of the early parts of the film, and then, you know, she becomes quite. You know, quite sort of mean in her, you know, in wanting to, you know, make the kills and all that sort of, you know, and I mean, I suppose that's there's definitely an allegory for addiction in this film, isn't there? You know, it's.
Oh, I'm glad you said that. Yeah.
And you can see that particularly with the May character, in that she, you know, when she's getting to the point that she needs her fix. Her character changes completely.
Give me an example.
So I think, is it in the bar when she's, you know, I think it's.
Oh yeah, when
she starts to.
With the cowboy.
Yeah. And that's, I think.
And you see how she operates, you know.
Yes.
She's
when
as
she's
much
sort
a killer
of.
as any of them, you know.
Yeah. Which I think was, you know,
to reach for the blood.
it's a really great.
He cuts the waitress's throat. Sorry to break in, but yeah.
No. But yeah, you know, I think it's a really well written character, because there is that sort of duality to her. You know, she's trying to. You get the impression early on in the film that she's trying to break away from these sort of this group, but she can't quite sort of do it, and she just slips straight back into there.
She's fully trying to recruit Caleb into the life as well.
Yeah. And then we've got these sort of four members of this sort of nomadic
Best vampire gang ever.
best vampire gang ever.
Yeah, I mean it's an outlaw film, and
Lance Hendrickson. I mean, I've talked on this podcast before. I'm not a huge fan of Lance Hendrickson. I don't see why people like him so much. But I can recognise when he's well suited to a character, and I'm not going to sit and shit on every Lance Hendrickson performance in the world ever. But I thought he was really effective in this film. He really suited the role, and really,
yeah, perfect gang leader, and perfect austere vampire elder.
yeah,
And if
you
anyone's going
believe.
to play someone who's been around since the Civil War, drinking necks, then he's the man. You don't like him? Okay. I like him in The Pit and the Pendulum as Torquemada, as the alien bishop in Aliens, the robot android, and what else do I like him? Oh, and the gang leader in Stone Cold. What could you possibly not like him in?
I don't know. I don't know what it is. I think it's a thing. I remember watching interviews with him on, I think it's the Aliens documentary on the original quadrilogy DVDs, and he just comes across as a bit of an a-hole. But like I said, I can recognise, I can separate the artist from the art. And
He really put the effort into this one. He lost a ton of weight, so that's why he's got that skinny, gaunt, mean look. And apparently he drove down and he was picking up hitchhikers and just scaring the crap out of them, like being in the role all the way to a set.
yeah, because wasn't there something about it? Didn't Bill Paxton do that as well, when he was in the full sort of burn makeup that he?
Yeah, he turned up at the train station.
But yes, I mean, let's get on to it, because this Bill Paxton, I mean,
Star of the show.
absolutely, this is he's just turned up to 11 on this totally, and steals every single scene he's in. It's the absolute Paxton show, and God bless him, rest in peace, Bill Paxton. But just if you've got anybody, he's such a dependable actor to just get the tone of things absolutely spot on. And I always think it's just a massive shame that he didn't get. I don't think he got a lot of love outside of the sort of horror and sci-fi circles, and this is just a prime example of just how infectious Bill Paxton can be as an actor. And he gets, obviously, a good chunk of that is down to the script, but he just gets the best lines, delivers them absolutely, fantastically.
He ad-libs quite a lot of lines.
Oh, did he? All right, okay.
Like, who ordered pizza? Remember that fire we started in Chicago? Who we shit kicker heaven? I hated when they ain't been shaved. Finger licking good. All that stuff. That's all off the top of his head.
I think my favourite. I did actually read. There was the. I don't like it when they don't shave or something. Is that in the bar? That's in the bar. It's right, yeah. Touche. Yeah, he's just absolutely amazing in this film. And if you watch this film for nothing less, it's just he's just a force of nature, And
Catherine Bigelow describes the character as like the quintessential vampire, somebody who's just perfectly in tune with what he's doing. He loves it,
he loves. You get with the Diamondback and the Hooker characters that they like it to a degree. They're sort of satisfied with what they are and how they have to live their lives and things. But you just get that Severin just absolutely loves being a vampire and just loves killing people and loves sucking blood. Just loves being an absolute just force of nature.
When he's picking up those two girls on the street. slicking back his hair.
yeah. Well, I mean, that's it. They all get this they all get this opportunity to just sort of be, to sort of get into character and show how they, how they get their victims and things like that. And it's just
the
really
Life Has Its
fascinating.
Price, montage, yeah. There's little Homer, the little kid with his bicycle on the floor, and some poor guy comes over. Are you okay? Chomp. And then Jesse and Diamondback with the two robbers on the highwaymen on the street.
Yeah. So Jeanette Goldstein, she sort of finishes this sort of Cameron trilogy of actors, I suppose. How do you find her? I mean, she's probably got the least to do, I suppose, in this film. She's the character's very sort of quiet anyway.
Well, red hot sexy. I really fancied her in Terminator. That's not too sexist to say in a women horror film directed film. And sexy here, and a mother figure for the gang, to counterpart Jesse, the father.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she plays her part perfectly. Yeah, it is a small part, I guess, but vital.
But then I think you can definitely see, and I think wasn't this why Cameron recommended these sort of three actors, because of the chemistry that they built on Aliens.
Yeah, it comes through.
Yeah, definitely. You can tell that they probably settled quite easily into the roles on this film.
When they're laughing together, like playing poker in the motel room, or in the bar. You can just tell there's a natural easiness between them.
So, you mentioned in there, so Joshua John Miller as Homer.
Yeah, the feral street kid. He's scary.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that this was probably one of the one role in the film that was really crying out for somebody a little bit better as an actor.
Oh, no.
In certain places, and again, I'm not going to. I think similar to Adrian Paz, I think there's points where it sort of struggles. The character. So I think because he's supposed to be the oldest of the group, isn't he? And they call him Grandad or Grandpa or whatever.
I don't think so. No, Jesse calls him old man at one point, but from what I can tell, he's from the 50s. So he's about 40 years old, whereas Jesse's a good 200 years old.
You see, that's the impression I got. Anyway, but then I think he's. Well, that was the sort of impression that I got, and I think I just felt that he was. It wasn't a consistent performer. I think sometimes, obviously there's the points where he's pretending to be a kid when he's talking to Caleb's sister and all that sort of stuff, or a couple of other points during the film. But I just found that at times he was acting more like a kid at the points where he should have been acting more like a full-grown adult kind of thing.
Okay, can you give an example? Dancing in the bar.
Yeah. There was that bit. There was, I think obviously after it's revealed that the vampires and he's sort of taken Caleb's sister back to the room and stuff. He becomes a little bit sort of petulant, I suppose. He's sort of that his whole plan's sort of been ruined because it's Caleb's sister.
Yeah, I mean, that's very much in the script. Possibly, because he was a young person when he was turned, he still has a young person's mind.
All right, okay.
Still subject to those kind of hormones. I don't know. I like his performance. I liked him in Rubber's Age a lot as well. He's just an old soul in a young body. A troubling figure. Reminds me of the film Quixote, when he shoots the guy in the bar. I thought he carried it off.
Okay. And he's actually he's sort of horror royalty, really, isn't he? He's one of
He did this Final Girls thing, which I've never seen, but people talk about. He wrote
Final Girls. Well, is that the film or the series?
The film, I think.
Did he write that? All right, okay. It's really good film, that. I saw it not so long ago. If I'm thinking of the right one. With Marlene Ackerman, where her daughter goes back in time, I think.
The mum's a scream queen of some kind.
But yeah, if it is the one I'm thinking of, it's a really good film. But yeah, he's Jason Miller's son, isn't he? Or one of his sons.
Who's Jason
From The
Miller?
Exorcist. From The Exorcist.
What?
Damien Karras.
Okay, you got me. Got there in the end. So I guess he's the most least content with the vampire lifestyle, since he obviously feels pissed off that Maze doesn't want him, and has gone for Caleb and wants to get revenge by turning the sister.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's the one that brings it all down. You know, if there could have been a peaceful solution with the family just walking away, but he stops that by grabbing Sarah.
Yeah. And how did you find sort of Sarah as a sort of kid performance? Yeah, she was a little bit
just a kid, basically.
Yeah.
And the dad is just a dad, but you got the gang, so I'm not complaining.
Yeah. But I mean, I think there's, for some of the more, so obviously one of the most sort of pivotal scenes in the film is where they're in the bar, and I thought this was where it really, I wasn't overly, I was struggling in the beginning. It didn't grip me, in the first sort of 20 minutes of the film. I mean, it is quite a slow start in some respects, but by the time we got to this bar scene, I was just like, this I can understand why this is.
It's an amazing sequence. 10 minutes.
Yeah, because it just goes on. It's almost like a torture scene, because you know exactly what's happening and what's going to happen, and it just it was just fantastic.
And where they've been quite careful about not showing you any blood before, and like just Queen kills, here they just revel in it and show you the full horror of what a vampire is.
Absolutely. And I noticed the part, I think,
the best band in the world. So put the Cramps on the soundtrack, you've got 20 cool points right there.
And another sort of Cameron connection here as well is that the one of the guys in the bar is the same guy in Terminator 2 who
the trucker who gets punched onto the pool table.
Yeah.
And Cameron also borrows the device where when they enter the bar, they the click of the pool balls opens the scene.
Mm-hmm.
Notice that? He's carried that over into Terminator 2.
All right, no, I didn't notice that, actually. I love that. But yeah, this is the point where it all becomes about, and it shows, to see these, about the dance and the theatrics. They could just go in there and just kill them all and, and be done with it and burn the place down like they sort of plan to do at the end. But they go in, they toy and they play with every single person in that bar, every single person, and it's cruel and it's violent and bloody and nasty. And I think, again, when you go to that sort of addiction allegory about it, and it's just, it's just being, just being taken away with the addiction and reveling in the destruction, basically.
Yeah. And another opportunity for Caleb to prove his mettle as a vampire, which he fucked up.
Yeah, and fucking fails miserably.
That's the poor kid code.
I mean, even I at that point was like, just fucking do it.
Just bite him. Well, it's even worse when they're in the truck with the the black truck driver who introduces Chekhov's jackknife, and May is behind Caleb, nudging him on, come on, bite him, and he's just sitting there looking absolutely wretched and horribly sick, but he can't do it. He kind of goes towards him, but he just can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, it does make you. It makes you feel it, in that scene. You just like you are just sort of, you're fixated on Caleb, and it's like what is happening to him, and again, I suppose it comes down to that addiction, and wanting his fix, or knowing that he needs his fix, and not wanting to do what is necessary to get it, and it really draws you in on those scenes for sure.
Well, I guess you want him to be. By then, you've accepted the gang to some extent. Severin's cool, Jesse's cool. You want him to be part of the gang and find his place, but he can't do it.
Mm.
There are a lot of, I think, drug addiction allegories there. Like the town they're living in, Caleb lives in, is called Fix. That's going to mean something. There's a scene in the bus station where he just looks completely wretched, like he's on cold turkey.
Mm.
And he can't eat a chocolate bar, and the guy in the bus, the policeman in the bus station says, "What do you want?"
Yes, I mean it's quite it is a very icky film. I mean I've just come off a couple of episodes ago talking about heroin addiction in Trainspotting and Requiem for a Dream, and this is probably
another one.
Yeah, it's it's a very similar sort of depiction of what addiction can do to people,
and
quite
the ecstatic highs of
yeah, for sure.
When they get their vision and they see it, see the night. There was a scene from the script which they cut where May and Caleb go into the night, and he can see coyotes miles away and little field mice scampering in the desert at night, and but they tried to film it and it just looked rubbish, so they didn't use it.
So sort of jumping forward a little.
Oil derricks pumping the ground are there by accident either. I think they're meant to suggest syringes pumping into the body.
Mm.
There's that fantastic scene where May feeds Caleb, and
Yes,
drinking, and he's like gonna overpower her, and eventually she has to push him away, and she says, "Like, if you take too much, you'll kill me." And he's got this ghastly grin on his face with blood dripping down his mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely a lot of drug imagery.
Mm-hmm. So, what about the ending? What do you think? It's a satisfactory ending?
Well, wouldn't Jesse and Diamondback have died anyway? Because they just blow up in their car.
Mm.
They're driving along, they blow up. Caleb doesn't really have much to do with it, so seems like the famous utility of equipping windows and things like that just failed them there. They just died anyway. I like the ending. In the script, it was different. So May is transformed back into a human. She's happy. But the final twist is that Sarah runs out to join them, but is burnt by the sun because Homer bit her and turned into a vampire after all.
Yeah, I read that, and to be honest, I think that would have been quite a cool ending.
Quite cool, but I like the ending that they chose because what you have instead is May looking not entirely sure. It's a freeze frame of her face. Like, is she happy that she's become a human, or does she realise what she's lost?
Mm-hmm.
I think the question is interesting.
Yeah, and I suppose if you're going with that, that the allegory for addiction as well. It's that, it's they're over their addiction. They beat their addiction, or and there's always, as with any addiction, there's always going to be that doubt that you going to fall back into that life, I suppose.
She's aware of the possibilities of what being a vampire entails. I mean, she's into immortality and doing whatever she wants for the rest of her life, and have an incredibly long life.
Yeah.
I don't think she's going to be happy in the town of Fix with Adrian coming home and farting on the sofa.
No, perhaps not.
Also,
No.
also you can see the conflict in that family. Like Adrian isn't comfortable, Caleb isn't comfortable with his dad. You know.
Mhm. Yeah. Are you surprised that this film has never had a sequel?
I'm glad it hasn't had a sequel because it would only,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
only cheapen it.
Yeah.
No, I think Catherine did the right thing. You know, she went on to projects, bigger and bigger projects, and has made an amazing career for herself.
Yeah. Sure.
I mean, Point Break is as great as this film, greater, and also has a few story elements in common.
Mm-hmm.
The tomboy that leads Keanu Reeves into the gang.
Yeah.
Same as me, you know.
Yeah. But well, anything else that you want to add before we move on from Near Dark?
Yeah. Okay. So there was another scene that got cut from the script. So after the big shootout in the motel, they take off in the car, and there's a big police chase, and Severin jumps out of the car and faces off with 3 cop cars by himself, and captures the poor frightened cowboy that May seduced, who'd fingered them, and Caleb drinks from him, so it actually becomes a full vampire. I think wise to cut that. It would have been an incredible action sequence. That's about it, really. Great film, I think. I mean, how did you feel about it by the end?
I mean, I must admit, I can see why it's lauded as much as it is. I thought that it was a very good film. I really did enjoy it. Like I say, it took me a while to get into it. Once we really got into Bill Paxton, just being completely fantastic. I was well into it then, and I think the end it's maybe a little bit rushed. I think once we get past his family showing back up, but not to its detriment. I think there could have maybe been a little bit more bridging that gap between him going back and them sort of turning back up. But I thought the runtime was probably just a really good point of this film as well, and I think it's well deserving of that sort of cult status that it's got. Obviously, the MVP of this film is Bill Paxton, and I'm so glad that I've seen it now, and it just cements in my mind that Bill Paxton is one of the most underrated actors to have ever lived.
I think my favourite performance of his, besides this, is Weird Science, where he's the arsehole brother.
Yeah,
He's just so monstrous in that film. He's so horrible. But a good leading performance by him. A Simple Plan. Sam Raimi's A Simple Plan. You seen that one?
Yes. Yeah. Just everything. He's such a even in I mean he's one of the best points of Aliens as well. He's one of the personal favourites of mine, not necessarily for Bill Paxton's performance, but Tombstone. I'm a big fan of Tombstone, and he obviously plays one of Whitehead's brothers, but it's a completely different type of role for Bill Paxton, and he just nails it. Even in Titanic, he's one of the better parts of Titanic, and that's not a film I have a whole lot of love for. I think he can put his hand to anything, and he did put his hand to anything, and and like I say, I don't think he got the plaudits that he deserved throughout his career.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Even Mighty Joe Young.
All right, that I have not seen.
That was bad. That was bad, but he was still fine in it.
I'd say this is a good punk rock film. and a nice serious treatment of vampires. I mean, I love Lust Boys, but it's good to have something that makes vampires just look horrific, grimy, and dangerous. Strip away all the artifice and just have the essential horror of what it is that they do.
Yes.
To choose that life, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, there's none of that sort of duality of the lifestyle of being a vampire. They are, you know, they're living it, aren't they? You know, they're not pretending to be, you know, ordinary teenagers for the other part of their life. They're just who they are, and they're just proper vampires.
Yeah, one step ahead of the law, barely. I think the only film that's close to it is John Carpenter's Vampires.
I've never seen that. It's been on my watch list for a long time. I need to watch it. Yeah, I do love John Carpenter.
Kind of horror of the vampire film. No fucking around, you know. Yeah, I recommend that one.
Okay, and then finally, before we move on, my last word is that we have our only X-Files connection of this episode.
Big one, yeah.
In your film, yeah, well, it's the third time that he's appeared as the X-Files connection on the podcast. Mr. Lance Hendrickson, who's obviously got to have his own place in the X-Files connection Hall of Fame for this podcast.
I never saw Millennium. Is it any good?
No, it's not very good. Well, I didn't think so. I mean, it's very different to the X-Files. I just couldn't get into it even before I didn't necessarily like Lance Hendrickson. But yes, he's. I don't know. It might be something I need to revisit in the future. I don't know if it's on. I mean, obviously X-Files is on Disney Plus, but I don't know if Millennium is. But you know, it got a lot of love. I don't think it, you know, necessarily got the numbers that the X-Files did, but it got a lot of love from the X-Files community, you know, the fans of the X-Files and stuff. But I just couldn't get into it.
Series as well, wasn't there? Spin-off.
Oh, Lone Gunman, yes, yeah, there was. I tried to get into that. I think it's, you know, it was a little bit too. Yeah, they were. I think that was sort of, you know, that series made it clear that there were very fun characters in small doses, as opposed to full series of them. I don't think that lasted more than one. Was it 2 series? Yeah, I don't think I got more than 3 episodes in anyway. But yeah, there we go.
For me, it's all about the first 3 or 4 series. You know, the relationship between Mulder and Scully. But eventually, you have to think, well, come on, Scully. You know, it's obvious that all this stuff is happening. Come on.
You've seen enough, yeah. But yes, there we go. That wraps us up for Near Dark. We'll take a break and we'll be back to discuss my choice.
Okay, I shall administer the final injection for the music.
Okay, so welcome to the intermission. So this is the part of the episode in which I ask my co-host a random question that they've not prepared for, and get their honest first answer. So Tarquin, are you ready?
Aye.
Okay, so here is your intermission question. What is the best video game based on a film?
Oh. Okay, so I'm not a big gamer. Okay, so there was a Sega Alien game I really remember enjoying, with face huggers coming at you and stuff. It was like, okay, what was that huge? Duke Nukem. It was like Duke Nukem, but
Alien Trilogy.
Kind of vibe. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're stomping through the corridors and you got face huggers coming at you, first person view. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, I remember getting that. I remember saving my pocket money up for that because I really wanted to play it. And it's very maybe not as much as something like Alien Isolation, which came, I think that's about 10 years old now, but it still played into that those fears that you have in watching the films, and nothing was just right in front of you. There was stuff, you could hear stuff sort of scuttling around, and the sort of noises, off screen. And really,
scary. I remember getting well into that.
Well, if you really want a scary experience, try and play Alien Isolation, because that is literally, you are one person on a spaceship with one alien, and the whole game is just avoiding the alien. Basically, it's really creepy. And really,
Okay, how recent is that?
It really sort of pulls you straight into that kind of tension. It's really fascinating.
Is it like a Nostromo type ship or an
Yes, yeah. It's a very condensed game. It's very simple, but it's all about being hiding and being stealthy and stuff like that. It's not just balls to the wall. You've got a pulse rifle and a flamethrower and stuff like that. You've got to be clever, and you've got to use your wits to stay out of its way, kind of thing. It's a really fascinating game. But for me, it's the opposite of that. More of a guns blazing kind of game. I'd have to go for the classic GoldenEye 007 on the Nintendo 64.
Okay, I remember that being massive. Yeah.
Well, it still is. I mean, it's been. I mean, I've recently, as part of my new phone contract, I've got Game Pass on the Xbox, which is free basically. So that means they have certain. It's a bit like a streaming service, so they have certain games every month, and you can just play them at your leisure. You don't have to pay for them or anything like that. You can just go on and click and start playing them. And one of them is actually GoldenEye, the original port of GoldenEye. So it's still got that sort of legacy and longevity to it, and it is, probably, it's very faithful to the film, and it's just great, absolutely great. It's not too difficult. It's not too easy. It's just right, and if you want to play James Bond with a silenced Walther PPK shooting Russians.
Okay. Well, who doesn't?
What more can you want? Oh no, let me just check. Let me just check the analytics and see if we have any listeners in Russia. I don't think we do. But there we go. That's the end of the intermission, and we'll head back to the okay, so even though this was my choice of subject, it was quite a difficult decision for me. There was at least 4 films that I considered. Firstly, Julia. I'm going to butcher this pronunciation. Julia Ducournau's Raw from 2016. Mary Harron's American Psycho from 2000, and Rose Glass's Saint Maud from 2019. They were all, really strong contenders for my choice for
American Psycho. Excellent choice. Yeah, that was a really
I felt that American Psycho is probably a better discussion for a different subject, maybe. But ultimately, I went for The Babadook from 2014.
Where'd you get this?
On the shelf.
If it's in a word or it's in a look, you can't get rid of the Babadook. A rumbling sound, then 3 sharp knocks.
Babadook, dook, dook.
That's when you'll know he's around. You'll see him if you look. Nothing bad's gonna happen, Sam.
Did you think that about my dad before he died?
He sees things as they are, that one. I promised to protect you if you promised to protect me.
Oh my God. Did he hurt anyone?
The boy has significant behavioral problems.
This monster thing has got to stop, all right? It's just a book. It can't hurt you.
You all right?
Yeah, no, I'm fine.
You don't have to be fine, you know.
Just a bit stressed at the moment.
All children see monsters.
Not like this. I want to report someone stalking me and my child.
You can't get rid of the Babadook.
You can bring me the boy. You can bring me the boy. You can bring me the boy.
What do you want? You're trespassing in my house! I'm sick, Sam. I need help. It isn't real. It isn't real. It isn't real.
So directed by and written by Jennifer Kent, starring Essie Davis, Noah Wiseman, Hayley McElhenney, Daniel Henschel, Barbara West, Ben Winspear and Kathy Adamek. So this is the story of a widowed single mother who with her son must confront a mysterious humanoid monster in their home. So this is based on Jennifer Kent's own short film called Monster from 2005, which is quite a nice little neat sort of short film. It doesn't obviously, it's a very short film. I think it's only something like 5-6 minutes, something like that. It's very short. It's got a much sweeter kid than this film. It's much more one-sided, that the mother's just sort of frustrated, and it's much more sort of straightforward, but it's visually pleasing, and you know the whole sort of theme of the short is that it's standing up to monsters and fear, but I think it retains that visual style quite. This film retains the visual style from that. Night merging into day, which happens quite a bit in the Babadook.
They wanted to shoot the Babadook in black and white, but
yes,
and said that was a no-go. So that what they did instead was gave it a very subdued tone, so it's still greys.
Yes.
And blues, rather
Yeah. Well, it's just the grey walls. I'll tell you what it reminded me of was the first two series of Red Dwarf. I don't know if you watched those, but like where the set was just completely grey and bland, and it reminded me of that. But this is probably as close to shooting in black and white that you can get without actually shooting in black and white. I think especially the scenes within the home, it just looks so bleak and cold and just desolate.
Yeah, she was rejecting cupboards because they were too brown.
Mm-hmm. And high praise for this film from one of the masters of horror. William Friedkin described this film as one of the scariest films he's ever seen. And I think, considering the lack of actual horror in this film, because it doesn't rely on the fantastic to scare you or to make you uneasy. The vast majority of the tension and the unease is very much grounded in reality and these sort of ideas of loss and grief and just being just tired. This for anybody who's sort of pushed themselves to certain limits, or suffered with things like oh God, why is that word just completely escaped me?
Bereavement?
No, what's the word when you can't sleep?
Trauma?
No. Oh my God. Insomnia! Jesus Christ. Completely gone out of my head, that word. Completely.
Another take.
Yeah, you can tell I've not been sleeping great this week. I'll edit it somehow. But yes, just, people who have those feelings of insomnia, and this, and I've suffered with insomnia in the past, and, having children, when they're particularly young, you just completely empathize with the Amelia character at points in this film, and I know what that feels like, of just being so tired that you don't know your arse from your elbow. It
really captures it fantastically. The feeling of just being on your last nerve, and screaming brat as kicking the seat behind you and doing everything wrong. Yeah.
Well, I mean, fortunately,
it's not a conventionally scary film. I didn't find
no.
I actually thought the short was scarier. The scene with the monster coming up the stairs, but what it does really get is the dynamic between the mother who doesn't quite love her child, who
exactly.
disappointed and horrified by her son, and who is also repressing something real, trying to
absolutely. Absolutely, and I think we've had that a little bit more, in sort of modern times. We've had a lot more realistic interpretations of motherhood and just how bad it can it can sort of weigh on people. Not the vast majority of cinematic portrayals of mothers. Even some of the worst ones in film. They've not necessarily. There's always been a reason for it. I mean, there is with I suppose there is that sort of loss of a partner in this, but it's not always. It's always sort of shown in films that the maternal instinct sort of wins out, and always trumps everything. And this just doesn't. It doesn't do that. It reminded me of a film from a couple of years ago called The Lost Daughter as well, which was I don't know if it was written by, but it was directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal, starring Olivia Colman, which was very much about a mother who is just not maternal, and the shit that she put her family through because of it.
There's something wrong. We have to talk about Kevin.
We need to talk about Kevin. Yeah, again, another great example. And I think this film got compared to that a lot as well. But
extremely brave ground for a female director to just that ambivalence.
Yeah. Well, I think that was Lynn Ramsey. I think wasn't it? We don't talk about Kevin, or we need to talk about Kevin. But yeah, this this film really plays into those parental anxieties, social anxieties, and she's just like you said, she's almost sort of embarrassed by her son, and she's trying to sort of hide his behaviour from the world, I suppose, and sort of cover it up and sort of gloss it over. But those social anxieties are certainly there, even with a family, and the ultimate. Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. I just really wanted to slap a sister. Fucking hell. Yeah. But it's got probably one of the most one of the worst sort of anxieties really as well. In that who doesn't have anxiety about being caught masturbating as well.
Poor woman. Just having a wank. Bloody kid. Jump for the...
I know, jeez. Yeah. But the performance of Essie Davis is just pretty much impeccable. I think it's just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. You go so far into her sort of psyche that you almost feel like you're going to be trapped in it, and it's just the constant sort of, you know, bang 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 of this kid and her job and motherhood and school and everything else. It just pounds away at her. You know, there's one point where the kid's in bed with her and he's just grabbing her throat in her sleep, grinding his teeth. Really adds to that. No support from her sister whatsoever. And then, you know, you would get these sort of doubts about her. You know, obviously there's doubts about whether all of this stuff is just either in her head or her son's head at certain points. You don't know whether it's something that she's sort of dreamt up. You know, you get a bit of doubt about it because we learn halfway through the film that she was a writer. You know, did she write this book that turns up?
It seems unlikely that the Babadook's top hat was at the police station.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, it seems there's like a really obvious interpretation that the Babadook is her resentment that the husband died while he was driving the child, her to the hospital to deliver the child.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the hatred that she's fostering. And until she confronts it, it's always going to be there.
Yeah. But yeah, you know, there's just these moments of just pure desperation. You know, why you're shouting at him that, you know, why can't you just be normal? And then there's one point where they're in the restaurant. This is after the sort of, there's almost this sort of catharsis that he, you know, when we get past the halfway point of the film, the tables almost turn where he's the one who's concerned about her and her well-being because she's just gone so far over the edge that he's, you know, they're in a restaurant and there's other kids that are kicking off and she's just sort of sat there with this look of, it's not my fucking kid anymore, it's somebody else's that's kicking off. But you know, and then so what did you think of Noah Wiseman?
I mean, if you can dislike Joshua Miller, then I didn't think he was that great. But you know, you have to compare it to like the two great child performances, Sixth Sense and Elliot in E.T. He's not there, but he does okay. He does all right. He has a convincing tantrum, but you know, it's all about Essie Davis, I think.
The script is very, whether the delivery in places is good enough, I don't know. I don't think it necessarily is in places, but the lines of his that are sort of played for laughs, I think they work really well. You know, when he's sort of telling a random woman that his dad died driving his mum to the hospital to have him, or he's sort of coming through when social services arrive and telling him that he's really tired from the drugs that mum gave him.
He always says the absolute worst thing. That is the monster.
Yeah, but I do like, and like I said, you know, you get that sort of role reversal halfway through the film that sort of that really works, and you know, he becomes the one who's almost goes into Home Alone mode, I suppose, and he's the one who's having to
don't worry, mother, I'm going to protect you. Stroking her cheek.
Yeah,
it reminded me of the young Elvis when his dad went to jail. Vern went to jail, and he became the man of the house, and he took that role seriously all of his life. And basically, this film just reminded me of me and growing up with my mum. We're a single mum, and just all the shitty ways people treat single mothers, and all the condescension, and the veiled aggression that they face from society. You know, you're not as good as us because you haven't got a husband. You're not as good as us because you haven't got a father. She really nails that. She really brings it up.
Yes, absolutely. I think, you know, like say, you know, she's the character is sort of getting that. Amelia's getting that from her own family as well, which just makes it even more deplorable. Yeah. But this is a horror film, at the end of the day, and aside from those, those sort of real life anxieties and horrors and tension, we've got Mr. Babadook himself, which is very, is extremely fleeting in this film. This is the second time I've watched it, and I couldn't believe on the second watch how little of the Babadook is in this film.
Yeah, I mean, you get like 2 clear looks of his face when he's behind the old woman in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
Betsy Davis is in the kitchen looking into the old woman's house.
Yeah.
And you see him like for a second behind her. And then when he's on the ceiling coming down at her, that's the only 2 times you see his face.
Yeah.
It's a bit...
But then we don't really even see him in the finale, do we? He's very sort of shrouded in the shadows. But how did you find the sort of look of the Babadook? Do you think it was effective?
Ambitious. Kind of a Edward Gorey, Tim Burton type look, old Gothic. Those George Méliès films, I think that's right, George Méliès. Black and white clips that they showed. It seemed like there was a character that was exactly like the Babadook in that, jumping out of the Jack in the Box with arms outstretched, top hat, cloak. I liked what she was going for, but I don't think she had the budget to realise it. It looked quite naff at some points when it's creeping on the ceiling. The kind of stop motion animation. So it didn't really scare me. And what I loved more was what she was trying to do with the story of Essie.
Yeah, I think that where the monster, quote unquote, becomes very creepy is that, and it's not really. Again, I remember it being a lot more in when the first time I watched it, but it's not very much. It's not actually in the film very much. Is the the Babadook, and that I think that could have maybe been used a little bit more in the film. I think, but. I know what you're saying. I think it does look a bit sort of janky, doesn't it, really? Whether that was intentional or not, or whether it was down to the budget, I don't know. But
budget, like $3 million, I think, and they had to finish it with a Kickstarter.
Yeah. But the sort of build up with the book, and I think the book is actually probably even creepier. The way it sort of.
Oh yeah. The book is fantastic, and the way they shoot.
Yeah.
Dead.
Really, really well done. Really, just looks fantastic. But then you never know throughout the film really what I think. And the way I like to read the film is that I think obviously I think there is a Babadook, and there is whatever you're going to sort of pin on, where he comes from and what he represents and everything else. But I think this film, for me, works better if it's a case of there is a Babadook, but you never know what is down to Amelia's own sort of demons and her madness, and what is the Babadook, because I think she obviously gets possessed by the Babadook as well at one point, but I think it works for me better if it's when it's interpreted as being an amalgamation of all those things. Whether that's because she's such a low point that she's allowed the Babadook in and allowed that in. I suppose that is the allegory, really. But there is those sort of things lead to the only death in the film, really, which is killing the dog.
Bugsy, yeah.
Which is in 2014. There's not many people who'll take a chance on killing a dog on camera. Not that.
White dog.
Yeah. Shock. I couldn't remember that from the first viewing, but I was like, oh Jesus! And then pulling a tooth out is just
Yeah, I mean, there's a favour that the Babadook does because that tooth has been bedeviling her all the way through the film. She's touching her jaw, and she says, her sister says, "Why don't you just go to the dentist?" And she says, "Yeah, goodbye, £3,000." I mean, there's real horror for you,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She can't afford to go to the dentist.
Who can? Bloody hell.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it sort of leads to this this sort of final confrontation with the Babadook, which, interestingly, we were talking about video games. The soundbite of the Babadook, that sort of screechy noise, I'm not going to even attempt to try and do it here, but that is actually a soundbite from the original Resident Evil.
Okay.
Which I believe was used later on something else. I can't remember what it was now. It might have been another game like Doom or something like that. But yeah, that's where the soundbite for that came from. Whether Jennifer Kent's a fan, I don't know, or if that's maybe just a royalty-free soundbite, I don't know. Maybe that's where Capcom used it. Yeah.
Wilhelm screamed for a time.
But yeah, for me, I think, the Babadook, I didn't expect, when this first came out, and I saw it not long after it came out, I think it's one of those really great films that is, you expect it to be one thing, and it's just not. It's just completely its own film and its own story, that it's almost sort of shocks you that it doesn't go down certain routes that perhaps other films of this era and this style would go down, and I just found it fascinating, and even more so on the second watch, because was this the first time you'd seen it?
Yeah. And finally, it's time for me to say thank you for introducing me to a film, because I really enjoyed it, and I really got a lot from it.
Oh, great. Yeah, I mean, like I say,
not Willow, but this one.
Hey, thank you.
Sorry. It's a horror film, but it's about something. It's about something real.
Yeah, it's great. It's what great horror should be, and I think it's quite again, films of this ilk could very much have gone down a particular route, especially the ending. But it's quite a logical, sort of satisfactory ending to this. A lot of other films of this style would have maybe a stinger at the end, or a big, epic sort of visually satisfying battle at the end. This is very low key.
Hardcore psychological truths. You have to confront the horror, and you have to make it a part of your life, and feed the horror and deal with it.
Yeah. And you get a pet.
With you one way or the other.
Yeah, and you get a pet Babadook in the basement as well. But I think where it really works is that like you say, it's confronting the horror, and not even necessarily that. It's the relationship with the son. She's not thinking of him as a burden anymore. She's thinking of him as just being his own character, and him having his own personality. Who cares if he just says stuff that's on his mind? Yeah,
she sees that as a strength. In the end, he always speaks his mind like his father.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just a really sweet, satisfying ending to this film, and I just love it. I think compared to some of the other choices that I might have picked, this was certainly, I mean, probably Raw, the French film from 2016, is probably the one that I would say is quite similar. Not in story, but I think into that sort of journey that you go on through the film is very similar to this.
I've seen her
Titan, yeah. I mean, Raw's a lot better than Titan, but Titan is a great film. But Raw
It's
is
like a prequel to Herbie Goes to Monte Carlo.
Yeah. Wow.
I love the dance sequence where she starts freaking out the fireman. That's quite clever.
Yeah. And then I mean, American Psycho is American Psycho. We don't really need to say too much about that. I would hope that most people have seen that and know what it's about. And Saint Maud, I think, is sort of similar to this film in sort of that descent into madness, except that there's no sort of redemption in that story at all. But for me, like I said, it's as a female-directed horror and written by the female director Jennifer Kent. It's just a fascinating example of writing against the grain, I suppose, and really writing a realistic portrayal of motherhood or a certain facet of motherhood, and behavioural, parental, social anxieties, as well as just epic tension throughout.
I can see why you weren't so keen on Evil Dead Rise now, because having seen the Babadook, that really knocks it down a few pegs. I mean,
which one? Sorry.
Really see the horror of Evil Dead Rise.
Yeah.
Because it just looks so cartoony in comparison to the horror of seeing a mother scream at her child.
Yeah.
Evil. Yeah. That's probably the scariest part of the film. Female horror. Have you seen Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities on Netflix?
I haven't, no. No.
It's Jennifer Kent. It's a fucking shame that she hasn't done more. She did this. She did another film quite soon after. And then there's like a 16-year gap in her IMDb page. And then finally she gets an episode of Cabinet of Curiosities. She tells a similar story, again with Essie Davis, a woman who's repressed sexually and because of a trauma in her life that she has to confront. And there she gets to go full horror, full scary business. Yeah, definitely recommend that. And
cool, I'll check that out.
Female horror director in that series as well, who does an episode. She did A Girl Walks Home at Night. It's like a Iranian vampire film.
All right, okay.
And she gets an episode in that, which is just fantastic. That was the star of the series for me.
All right, cool. I'll check that out. I shall check that out. Have you seen Jennifer Kent's other film, The Nightingale?
No, any good?
It's a tough watch. It's a very, very tough watch. It's not a patch on the Babadook. It's sort of what's the best way to describe it? There's some very graphic scenes in it that are not easy to watch, and it's probably a little bit over long, and a lot of the back end of the film feels a little bit sort of like filler, but it's definitely worth a watch. It looks pretty stunning. It looks pretty stunning. The performance. Let me just check. I can't remember what her name is. I can't even pronounce it. But it's an Irish woman who plays the lead. Is really good in it. And the main sort of villain of the piece, Samuel Claflin, I think his name is fucking brilliant. He's a really good villain in it. He's a proper, you want to reach into the screen and fucking throttle this cunt, basically. It's worth a watch, definitely. But it's just not
through in all the interviews is how much of an actress director Catherine actually both of them were Jennifer Kent was like a couple of years ahead of Essie Davis at Australian Drama School, and Essie Davis said she was just brilliant, like the best person in the school, and so I guess that's part of why she was able to coax such great performances out of them.
But yeah, I mean that's pretty much all I've got to say about the Babadook. And I mean, are we on a stalemate this time around? I'm not going to say that I prefer Near Dark to the Babadook, even though I was very, I did enjoy Near Dark, and I was blown away as always by Bill Paxton. But what about you? Have I done enough to? Is this good enough a film to convince you I'm right?
Fucking 3 stalemates in a row, man. What's going on? No, sorry, I'm not going to give ground. I do prefer Near Dog. Yeah, sorry. I like Babadook a lot, but I think as a horror film, Near Dog delivered. Has more punch.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
there's 2 great scenes in Near Dog. They will always stay with me. Where May first leans in to bite Caleb. That's in slow motion, and it's just this wonderful, ethereal, eternal moment. And the bit I mentioned earlier, where Caleb almost sucks May to death, and she pushes him away, and he's got this ghastly grin on his face. I mean, I'm quite rich. Those spaces for me. A great film.
Okay. Fair enough. Let's take it to the polls. Yes, so I mean this, as I mentioned at the start of the episode, we're going to be taking a short break from the usual format, just a little hiatus over Christmas. So Tarquin will be back after the new year at some point. And it's your turn this time round, Tarquin, to pick a subject. So start having to think about that. Or you can always spin the wheel if you wish. Although you guys don't seem to want to do that. But yeah, that about wraps us up for this episode then, Tarquin, and it just leaves me to say goodbye, and for you to say...
I'm a bit tired from the drugs Mum gave me.